Gone Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 8:03 here on LBC. You're listening to Iain Dale. We have Brandon Lewis with us in the studio, Chairman of the Conservative Party, MP for Great Yarmouth, and, as I said before, Minister for the Cabinet Office. You can watch us during this hour on the LBC website, lbc.co.uk, on YouTube, Facebook page, Twitter, goodness knows where else as well. Brandon, welcome.
Good evening.
It's good of you to come in. You're going to take some calls in a bit. It's probably one of the worst days you could pick to come in to do an interview like this in some ways, I guess.
I sort of pick a quiet day.
So let's start with an easy one. Why is Chris Davis still a Conservative MP, having been convicted in a court of law of a criminal offence?
Well, look, I think the situation with Chris is one that his electorate will obviously have a view on, and they'll have an opportunity to have that view in terms of the recall situation. I think with Chris, there is something I think it's only fair to be very clear about. He from the very beginning has held his hands up. He's taken responsibility for it, said he did something very stupid, very wrong. That's been properly dealt with. He has not shied away from that at any point. And of course, because of the way the rules work, his electorate will have a say on how that goes forward, and that's how it should be.
So there will be a trigger ballot, will there?
I think because of the
recall petition.
My understanding is because of the sentence and because of what has happened, it automatically goes into a recall motion. So his residents will have an opportunity to decide if they want to keep Chris as their Member of Parliament.
Because when Fiona Onasanya, the Labour MP for Peterborough, was sent to jail, admittedly Chris Davis hasn't been sent to jail, but he's still being convicted, the Labour Party immediately suspended her from the party, and they've stuck by that, and they wish she would resign. Now, you didn't do that with Chris Davis. Why is that?
Well, I think there's a particularly big key difference, actually. One is, first of all, Chris has, from the very beginning, as I said, held his hands up, taken responsibility for his actions, and has been prepared to do that quite rightly because of what he did, which is quite different to the situation in Peterborough, where we've had an MP who has not accepted responsibility, has denied it all the way through, argued against it, and still shown no contrition at all, whereas Chris has shown a huge amount of contrition and acceptance of what he's done.
Do you think that lawmakers can be lawbreakers?
Well, I think, as I say, the court has come to a view. Chris himself has outlined what he has said, what he has done, and accepted responsibility from that. And I think, he's somebody who wants to make the point to his electorate that he has taken responsibility, accepts the outcome of his actions, and it'll be a matter for them to decide if they want him to carry on.
But that will sound to a lot of our listeners as though you think, well, yep, lawbreakers can be lawmakers, because he's broken the law, he's been convicted of it, and yet he's still going to be voting on all sorts of very important issues.
And there will be members of Parliament, and there have been members of Parliament who have broken the law in terms of whether it's a speeding offence or going through a traffic light.
You can't really equate this to a speeding offence with respect, because this was a deliberate attempt to defraud the taxpayer of money, wasn't it?
Well, no, that's not actually what happened. First of all, as Chris himself has outlined, he made a mistake. He did something that was very stupid, unacceptable, and wrong. He obviously he actually didn't do it to profit for himself, as it happens in the way it worked, as it was outlined in the case, and he has taken responsibility for that.
He manufactured invoices. I mean, what part of that isn't?
Well, as I say, because of what happened, as Chris himself, I think, outlined in the case, he has not profited from what he did. He was claiming for something he could have claimed for, but he did it wrong. He did it in a way that was not acceptable. It did break the law. He held his hands up to that. He pled guilty from the beginning, has shown contrition for that. And as I say, his residents in his constituency will have a chance to have a view about whether they wish him to carry on as their Member of Parliament in light of the position he has taken.
Are you happy with the position of the party in the opinion polls at the moment?
No, I'd always like to be top of the opinion polls, but the main opinion poll that I'm focused on is the one where people get to vote, and the next one of those is next week on May the 2nd.
But you are prepared for a pretty disastrous performance, I imagine.
Well, actually, I've been saying for some time, actually, if you look at these elections on May the 2nd, they are the toughest one in the parliamentary cycle for us. We've got about 8,500 councillors up for election. Roughly 2/3 of those we're defending, and they're people who got elected on the day of the 2015 general election. So this is going to be a very tough set of elections for us, and obviously we're doing it on a backdrop where people are frustrated around the situation with leaving the EU, and that will potentially have an impact as well. But as I say, I'm focused on what we're seeing, and I was out knocking on doors over the last week or so and over the weekend myself, and actually people focusing and talking about the issues that matter to them locally, whether it is their bin collections and their council tax and having the potholes, all those things that local councils do that affect us every day.
Go on, be honest, because I'm fed up with politicians who on Twitter all the time say, had the most marvellous canvassing session, response from the electorate is brilliant. And yet this weekend I've seen various Conservative MPs saying, well, actually, it hasn't been brilliant and it's all about the Prime Minister. When your constituents have you walk up to their doors and they know that you're the chairman of the Conservative Party, please don't tell me that they talk to you about bins. They talk to you about whether the Prime Minister has failed to deliver Brexit, don't they?
Well, it's both, actually. They absolutely talk about Brexit as well. But actually, I've got to say, I do get asked about bins. I got asked about bins this weekend, very specifically. I got asked about some of the issues with a sports centre in Great Yarmouth that council are looking to revamp and regenerate, and actually some of the really good work councillors do. Yes, obviously for some people, and particularly in a constituency like mine, which is one of the fifth highest vote for leave in the country, Brexit is an issue and people want to see Brexit done. But I have to say, what I get time and again is, can you lot in Parliament just get on with this and get it done?
Well, I'm sure you do get that, but what do you get from your own Conservative members? Because we know, there's, I think, 75 constituency chairmen and chairwomen have triggered a part of the Conservative Party constitution where there will now have to be, the National Convention will meet to decide to change the rules because they want to see an end to Theresa May. You've got, as we're sitting here, the executive of the 1922 committee are meeting to talk about whether a confidence motion can be brought now rather than in December. You know that your activists have lost confidence in the Prime Minister. You know your own MPs have lost confidence in the Prime Minister. When is she actually going to acknowledge that herself?
Well, look, I think first of all, the National Convention isn't CCHQ. I'm not the chairman of the National Convention, so I don't know if they've quite gone through the due process and the details around that. But let's be clear. I absolutely understand the huge frustration that our members have got, our activists have got, or particularly those who feel passionate about leaving the EU, actually on either side of the debate, because they want to see this resolved. We as a country have been divided over this. We as a party have been debating and discussing and arguably divided on the EU for many decades now. So there's no surprise about that. But I do recognise that huge frustration people have. And the reality is, we in Parliament have got to get this done. It's about Parliament actually delivering on what people directed Parliament to do. And in that referendum, which Parliament voted for en masse, said it would respect. We had the referendum result. There was a clear decision. The public want to leave. We have to deliver that. We had a general election where both key parties agreed. But you're not delivering that.
Everyone can see you're not delivering that.
But this is my point, Ian. I therefore understand the frustration our members have that Parliament has been unable to deliver Brexit. This isn't the government wants to deliver it. The Prime Minister wants to deliver it. We've got to get this through Parliament.
Let me just read out a tweet here. This is, I would say, representative of a lot of people who've tweeted and texted over the past 2 or 3 hours, ever since I tweeted that you were coming into the studio. Chris Zawadsky says, I'd like Brandon Lewis to know that I, and I suspect many others, will now never vote Conservative again in any election ever. I don't care what they do now, whether they turn it round or not. They've humiliated our country. Hashtag Brexit Party. Hashtag Nigel Farage. I'm with you now. Now, you must be getting this in spades with reaction into CCHQ.
Well, look, yeah, as I say, we've got people who are very frustrated about the government not having delivered.
Have you ever seen anything like this before in terms of numbers of complaints that are presumably addressed to you? In the year I've been, just over a year I've been chairman, obviously Brexit has been the dominating issue in terms of things that have frustrated people, whether it's been on either side of the argument. Obviously predominantly in our party, people on the side who want to get on with leaving the EU, and that's something the Prime Minister wants to do. And actually, whatever situation we find ourselves in as a party, it doesn't change the very simple parliamentary maths. We've got to find a way to get this through Parliament. And let's not forget, on the 29th of March, where we try to vote on just the withdrawal agreement, the bit that legally leaves the EU,
actually, I can't see why. I mean, the Labour Party, it's part of their policy that's agreed, and still parliamentarians voted against it. Whoever is the leader of our party, those parliamentary mathematics don't change. And actually, we've got to focus on getting something that can get through Parliament.
But the die is cast now. The Prime Minister promised we would leave on the 29th of March. We're not leaving on the 29th of March. She promised that we would not be taking part in the European elections. We will be taking part in the European elections. I mean, it's almost certain that we will now. And I think something in the last 2 weeks has changed. I think a lot of people, a lot of Conservatives were willing to give her the benefit of the doubt, but they no longer are. The die is cast now. Should she not set a date for her departure?
No, I think she should be doing exactly what she is doing, which is focusing on, with the Cabinet and the government, finding a solution that can get through Parliament. So we do what would the public charge Parliament with doing, which is leaving the EU. But this isn't just about the Prime Minister. This is the point I've been making, is actually this is about Parliament, the maths in Parliament. Actually, if Parliament wants to leave on the 29th of March, on the day we were supposed to leave, Parliament had a chance and it voted on the withdrawal agreement to leave. And parliamentarians voted against it.
Well, then you have to have a general election. If a government can't get its legislation through Parliament, there is only one option, a general election.
Well, I have to say, for all of the contact I get with residents, whether it's wherever I am in the country knocking on doors, I probably knock on more doors in more parts of the country than almost anybody else in my job in terms of range of the country. All of the emails I get, I have not yet had residents saying, oh, actually, I'd quite like a general election. I think most people are with Brenda on feeling that we've had the referendum, we've had a general election, both of which gave a very clear message to parliamentarians of all parties, and I include the Labour Party in this, which is to deliver on the result of that referendum.
But sometimes, if a Prime Minister can't deliver, and patently Theresa May has not been able to deliver yet, then you have to step aside and let someone else have a go. There has to come a time when that happens. You would surely accept that.
Well, as I said, Ian, actually the argument I would make is that doesn't change the parliamentary maths.
Well, I know you've said that 3 times now, but that doesn't actually change the fact that not only has our own party lost confidence in the Prime Minister, so has the country.
Well, no. Actually, Ian, look, first of all, we don't know what the outcome of the 1922 committee is. I certainly haven't seen an outcome
I haven't either.
On my way in tonight.
Let's pray to God that it happens before 9 o'clock.
The party had a vote, as per the party rules in December, and it showed its confidence in the Prime Minister.
Right, we will speak a little bit more to Brandon Lewis in just a moment and come to your calls 0345 6060 973. It's 8:15.
LBC.
Let's hear it for Ozzy, the nature-loving pug. He thought he'd get a buzz out of eating a bumblebee in the garden. Ouch! Oh. Luckily, his family didn't get stung, because Pets in a Pickle had little Ozzy covered. And now he's back in the garden, chasing butterflies. Phew! For pet insurance policies as unique as they are, get a free quote today at petsinapickle.co.uk.
Unlock the city with the new Range Rover Evoque. Know your side streets. From your inner city beats. Know your underbelly. And where to fill your belly.
Your lamb, madam.
Know your north from your south. Live for the city with the new Range Rover Evoque. Land Rover, above and beyond.
Have you had an operation that has left you with persistent pain around the healed scar? You may feel this pain as burning, aching, shooting, throbbing, or stabbing. At St Pancras Clinical Research, we're looking at a new potential treatment for this pain, which we apply topically. The study will take place in London, and if you volunteer, you'll be paid for your time and reasonable expenses. Find out more at stpancrasclinicalresearch.com. That's stpancrasclinicalresearch.com.
Psst! Did you know that Pimlico Plumbers have an utterly fabulous 24-hour service for plumbing, heating, drains, roofing, electrics, appliances, carpentry and building? Whatever your predicament, Pimlico Plumbers can send a friendly face to your door within the hour. Shh! And just between us, their work even comes with a 12-month guarantee. They aren't just any old tradesmen, they're Pimlico Plumbers, and they're always available on 0207 928 8888 or at pimlicoplumbers.com.
When it comes to making a PPI claim, you can either do all the work yourself by complaining directly to your lender or the Financial Ombudsman for free, or you can contact the claims guys and get them to do all the donkey work for you. So if you don't have the time or the paperwork, or you're not certain you have PPI, make sure you beat the deadline on the 29th of August 2019 for making new claims by contacting the claims guys. Text ANSWER to 66777. Text ANSWER to 66777 now.
The Claims Guys.
radio, playlists and podcasts. All together and all for free. Global Player. Download it from your app store now. Iain Dale on LBC.
18 minutes past 8 here on LBC. You can watch us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and on the LBC website. Brandon Lewis, Chairman of the Conservative Party, is with us. We'll come to your calls in just a moment. On the European elections, the other parties have announced all their candidates. Have you done that yet?
Yes, yeah. We I think the nominations all just about finished off, but I think Conservative Home actually published it over the weekend, which was our full list of nominations.
And how many of the candidates are existing MEPs who are a bunch of complete Remainers?
I think John Flack might argue with being a complete Remainer.
A lot of them are, though, and some of them are number 1 and number 2 on the list. So that will also further people's fears that actually nothing has changed, to coin a phrase.
Well, I think if people have a look through, we've got a good broad range of experience, of age, of views on Europe as well. We've got some people, obviously Dan Hannan is not exactly a Remainer.
I'll give you that one.
Or Ashley Fox, and so yeah, I think I can make a fairly good case on that. In other areas, yes, there are people, but that's the point. There's people from right across that. We're a wide open church as the Conservative Party, but all of their candidates understand and will respect the Conservative Party's policy, which is to leave the EU.
And what is your budget for expenditure on the European election campaign? Because it might be throwing good money after bad.
Well, you won't be surprised to know, Ian, that giving out our budgets live on air and on your show, as tempting as it might be, isn't something I'm going to do. But,
if you won't reveal the money, what about Conservative MPs campaigning in European elections? Because I was listening to one of your senior colleagues, Sir Geoffrey Clifton Brown, on the radio this morning as I was driving down the A11 from Norfolk, and he made quite clear that he hadn't got any intention of doing any campaigning in these elections. Well, what message does that send out to all your party activists?
Well, as I said earlier on, I fully understand. These are elections that I don't want any of us to have to put any effort into. I'd like us not to be fighting these elections and to get this through Parliament and done and dusted by them. But look, the reality is this does actually create huge frustration, as I said earlier on, for our members and our activists. I understand that. My focus at the moment is on next week. We've got very, very important and big local elections next week. Once we move past that, if we do end up actually having to fight these European elections, then I hope as we get towards it that members and activists in the party and colleagues across the House within our party will want to see Conservatives elected, because if we have to fight these elections, I'd like to make sure people have got good Conservative representation.
What would you say to any of your MP colleagues who were giving support to Brexit Party candidates? Today, Lucy Allen, a Conservative MP, retweeted something from Guido Fawkes saying that there were 5 outstanding Brexit Party candidates unveiled this morning. You had Andrea Jenkins saying something similar. Should they not be disciplined for that?
Well, I haven't seen exactly what Andrea said. I appreciate Lucy made the comment around this, and there are some interesting candidates. Actually, I saw Change UK have got Gavin Ayres. There's some interesting candidates across the board. Actually, we've got some very good candidates. When it comes to if we fight those elections, I would like to find that all of our Conservative Party, not just our MPs, but our activists and our members want to see Conservatives elected. That's what we are here for. It's what we're focused on as a party, to make sure we have good representation.
And if a Conservative MP publicly stated that they were going to vote for the Brexit Party in these elections, should they have the whip withdrawn?
Well, that would be a matter for the Chief Whip. I don't have anything to do with the whip.
Under advisement from you?
Well, actually, the whip is entirely a matter for the Chief Whip. It's not under advisement from me.
Well, it is, because you're the chairman of the party. You are entitled to a view on whether somebody who does that should be allowed to stay in the party. And in normal circumstances, they most certainly would not.
Well, yeah, so there's two different things there. So the whip is a matter for the Chief Whip, entirely a matter for the Chief Whip, and I'm not going to encroach on his area. In terms of discipline within the party, we have a very clear set process. I have a role in that as chairman, but because the role I have in that, I'm not going to prejudge a decision on what may or may not happen, because it's tempting me into hypotheticals that I rather hope don't happen, both at the level of not fighting the elections, and if we do, the Conservatives are united behind getting Conservatives elected.
What's the point in the Conservative Party fighting these elections? Because you know as well as I do, you're going to get an absolute drubbing.
Well, the reality is we're a national party of government, and actually this is highlighted again. I keep coming back to, I'm going to tempt you eventually to talk about next week, Ian, the local elections. We're fighting 96.5% of all the seats. Labour only fighting 77%, and then it goes down from there. We are a national party of government. We are in government. if we have to fight these elections, which is about sending representatives out to the European Parliament, I think it is right that we make sure we do what we can to give people good representation. And to me, that's about having good Conservative representation.
Shall we go to a call? If you'd like to put your headphones on, because you'll be very pleased, or possibly not pleased, to know that your first caller is Paul in Great Yarmouth. Paul, have you got a friendly question for Brandon or a not friendly question?
Well, I'm friendly to everyone, but Brandon
Hi, Paul.
has failed to represent his constituency. Every chance he's had to vote to get us out of Europe, he's gone the party line. Well, I'm afraid he should be getting his CV ready, because he'll be looking for a job, because the consensus of people around here is they don't want to ever trust Conservatives again, because they failed to do. We give them the mandate to leave, and they do not want us to leave. They're trying to hook, and they're trying to crook every way to keep us tied up to that mess across the water. And I'm afraid, Brandon, the message I can give you, you've got to play a better game than you're playing, because you're losing.
Oh, well, look, good evening, Paul. Paul and I know each other well, Ian, I think, over the years. Look, Paul, I know you feel very strongly about this. Actually, first of all, just factually, I've actually voted to leave the EU. And when we had the withdrawal agreement, that last vote on the 29th of March to actually leave, I was one of those who voted to leave the EU. And I've consistently held that position. And I'm not going to deny,
because you voted Remain in the referendum.
Oh, no, as I say, in Parliament, I voted to leave. Yes, I did vote Remain in Parliament. I've never denied that point. But in Parliament, I've respected that referendum result. I stood on the general election manifesto to deliver on that referendum result, and I voted, even, as I say, on the 29th of March, as I have done previously. And the reason I vote with the government on this is I think the government's position has been the correct one, which is to leave, to respect that referendum, ending free movement, ending the common agricultural, common fisheries policy, which I know you care passionately about, Paul, but to do so in a way that works for our economy.
75% of people in Great Yarmouth voted to leave, because they've seen their lives change. Now, Brandon, your party, you can tell me what you want, and I'll believe you. But your party do not want to leave, and it's a mess. And I'm afraid the people are going to show how bad they feel about the mess that you've led us into when we vote. I mean,
Paul, you are right in many ways in what you say, but what about all of the ERG Tory MPs that, by not supporting Theresa May's withdrawal agreement, that means that is the reason why we haven't left? It's not just all the Remainer MPs, it's down to them as well.
Hang you on. That her deal, you never leave. You're tied in forever. That's just a complete fabrication of mistruths. You never leave. Her pledge was, we're leaving a bad deal. No deal is better than a bad deal.
Yeah, what happened to that, Brandon? No deal is better than bad deal.
Well, there's a couple of things. Paul, I'm afraid I'm going to disagree with you on a core point here. Is, first of all, no deal has been ruled out by Parliament. Secondly, yes, no deal is better than a bad deal, but we've got a good deal. And the reason I think this is a good deal, as I said earlier on, is we do leave. We leave the direct jurisdiction of the ECJ, the Common Agriculture and Fisheries policies, we end free movement, we end those unaccounted for, all that money going over every single year, and we do so, and we leave with a way that gives us a good free trade agreement with the EU. That's good for our economy, good for jobs. That means we are respecting the referendum and doing so in the best way for our economy. So I think it's a good deal. And actually, I think it then allows us to do those trade deals that we can be doing around the world. Yes, it does. 80% of
that without your nose getting longer, because it does not do that at all. It effectively means we're members of the customs union. It could be for infinity, and we can't do trade deals while we're members of the customs union.
No. The deal that you're I assume you're talking, Ian, about the backstop.
I am,
but that's a different thing. The deal,
it's in the withdrawal.
But the overall deal that we've put forward, the Prime Minister's deal that came out after Chequers and the agreement we had last year, does allow to, the point Liam Fox has made, does allow us to do trade deals around the world. If we are in the backstop,
it does not.
The backstop is pre that future trade agreement. It's a different thing.
It does not allow you to do trade deals until that backstop issue is sorted, and that could be 10 years, it could be 20, it could be never.
Well, again, Ian, I think you and I had this discussion when the backstop first came out. I was on your show that night as well. I do time these quite well, I think. But look, the position with the backstop is, first of all, if you look at what the backstop is difficult for us. I mean, all of this is about a compromise. That's the reality. We are doing this is about.
But
this deal is about
are you really
a compromise.
expecting people who voted Leave to be able to do trade deals all around the world? Are you expecting them to compromise on that? Because a lot of them will say that is a compromise too far.
No, and one of the points that Liam Fox has made is it is important we have an independent trade policy, and we will have that. The backstop, if it comes into force, and I have to say my personal view is, if you look at what the backstop is, I can't see how the EU would want to ever allow that to come into force. But if it does come in under best endeavours, but bear in mind this is after the implementation period, if the EU, under Article 50, you cannot have it as an indefinite solution. That Article 50 just doesn't allow for that anyway. Best endeavours is a serious legal bar, and both the EU and the UK have to be using best endeavours to get out of it. So I do not accept that it is indefinite, and actually it's part of why this is a deal that works for the UK.
How realistic is a deal with Jeremy Corbyn? Because it doesn't seem, he's saying that Theresa May hasn't compromised on any of her red lines. If there is to be a deal, there has to be some sort of compromise. And the only compromise I can see that Labour would accept is to join a customs union.
Well, actually, one of the things, I mean, those conversations with Labour are ongoing at the moment, but they're not finished yet. They're on a without prejudice basis, and I'm not part of those. I'm not in the room for some of those conversations, so I can't comment exactly where we've got to with Labour. But what I would say is, after the withdrawal agreement, it was very clear we have got to do things differently. There is, the reality is we have to compromise both sides of this debate to get a deal that we can get through Parliament to leave the EU. So we've got to do things differently. We've also got to get to the bottom of what does Jeremy Corbyn actually mean when he talks about a customs union, because he hasn't actually outlined what he means with that, and that can be on a whole spectrum of things. So we've got to get to the bottom of that, see if Labour are serious about doing what's in the national interest, what was in their manifesto, which is leaving the EU.
For 2 or 3 weeks now. Are you seriously telling us that Jeremy Corbyn hasn't made clear what he wants from the talks?
Well, I'm guessing from the fact you've just asked the question, you haven't seen him say anything that outlines it. I haven't seen anything from Jeremy Corbyn yet that outlines exactly what he means from what he wants in terms of the customs union. And the reality is, these talks taking a bit of time. It doesn't surprise me. As we've said before, this is a very complicated matter. There's a lot of detail to go through, but we've got to see, and we have got to get on with this, because we've got to deliver on this. And we've got to deliver on it as soon as possible, preferably, so we don't have to fight those European elections.
I'm not going to ask you what's said in Cabinet, because I know you're not going to tell me. But you will have had discussions either in Cabinet or outside Cabinet about whether these talks with Labour are really likely to go anywhere. Do you honestly get the impression that they are getting somewhere, or is it just both sides not wanting to be the ones that walks away first?
Well, I come back to the point I just made, I'm afraid, Ian, and say, look, the reality is Parliament has deadlocked itself. Even when it had indicative votes to look at what it would support, Parliament couldn't come to a conclusion. So we've had to look at doing things differently. We couldn't get a majority working without the Labour Party, so I think we had no choice but to actually do things differently, talk to the Leader of the Opposition about, is there something we can do that means we could get this through Parliament? Bearing in mind, as I say, I don't think we should forget, both parties in the 2017 election said they would respect the referendum. We're giving Labour a chance to be part of doing that, respect that referendum, and we've got to see if they'll follow through and do that. I'm
just looking at all the calls that are coming in. Not much on the local elections, it has to be said. Which
a shock.
I'm not sure will come as a huge surprise to you. But if you would like to ask about the local elections, which is actually why Brandon is here in the first place, please feel free. 0345 6060 973. But lots of other subjects that you want to cover. Brexit, and give him a little bit of warning of this one, Islamophobia in the Conservative Party. It's 8:31. Rachel Gerrish has the LBC News headlines.
Sri Lanka's Prime Minister's admitted Easter Sunday's terror attacks could have been prevented if his security forces had passed on key information that was handed in earlier this month. At least 321 people were killed in the bombs at churches and hotels. Mass protests are being threatened after Donald Trump's been invited for a state visit. The president will be here for 3 days at the start of June for the 75th anniversary of D-Day. The climate activist Greta Thunberg told MPs her future has been stolen. The 16-year-old Nobel Prize nominee has been meeting Westminster leaders as Extinction Rebellion protesters have focused their campaign on Parliament Square today. LBC weather, rain for the West Country, moving north tonight. Mostly dry and cloudy for most, though. An overnight low of 5 Celsius.
This is LBC.
I have made a will, and no, we haven't talked about it openly. But it does need talking about. Trouble is, I'm up north and Mandy's down south, and when I see her, we tend to do family things and go out with the children, and then all of a sudden I'm going home again. I think, haven't talked about that. Next time.
I don't know why she's not talking about it.
Well,
It isn't easy talking to your family about money, but it is important. The M word from Lloyds Bank. It's good to talk about money.
Have you had an operation that has left you with persistent pain around the healed scar? You may feel this pain as burning, aching, shooting, throbbing, or stabbing. At St Pancras Clinical Research, we're looking at a new potential treatment for this pain, which we apply topically. The study will take place in London, and if you volunteer, you'll be paid for your time and reasonable expenses. Find out more at stpancrasclinicalresearch.com. That's stpancrasclinicalresearch.com.
Calling all hard-working minicab drivers. Are you the very best London has to offer? Yes? Then Greyhound Cars, one of South London's oldest and most progressive minicab companies, want to speak to you. Spend less time travelling to jobs and more time earning money. With a very busy day circuit, we have high demand and are now offering great bonuses and mileage rates for the very best drivers. You could pay as low as 10% commission. Start today at greyhoundcars.co.uk.
Imagination is a wonderful thing. It can take you anywhere, to the beauty of the Baltic or the wildlands of Alaska. From the northern lights of Iceland to New Zealand's lush South Island. Imagination lets you dance in Buenos Aires, dine in Barbados, discover ancient Rome, indulge in new delights. Imagination can take you anywhere, but a voyage with Cunard will take you there for real. Enjoy a little extra with complimentary money to spend on board from Cunard. Conditions apply. Atoll protected.
Unlock the city with the new Range Rover Evoque. Know your side streets, from your inner city beats. Know your underbelly and where to fill your belly.
Your lamb, madam.
Know your north from your south. Live for the city with the new Range Rover Evoque. Land Rover, above and beyond.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
It's 8:34. Brandon Lewis, Chairman of the Conservative Party, is with us. You can watch us live on the LBC Facebook page, on the LBC Twitter feed, YouTube, and on the LBC website. We have everything covered, don't we? Let's go to your calls. Ferdows is in Manor Park. Hi, Ferdows. What would you like to ask?
Hi, Ian. I just want to ask Brendan, how long it's going to take for the Conservative Party to acknowledge the fact that Islamophobia is a phenomenon, is embedded so much in their party that people feel ashamed to be associated with that party. Think about the mainstream front benchers, like Boris Johnson didn't even want to apologize for the offence he caused. Think about Jacob Rees-Mogg sharing platform with European far right. Think about councillors getting suspended, reinstated. Nothing been done. So how long? Think about Brendan, your predecessor, Saido, was his own point of view that Islamophobia is embedded. It's such a way it's happened. But basically, the nasty party used to be called, but it looks like it's really is no longer a catchphrase. To be honest, it's becoming a really nasty thing in this country. And being a Muslim, I don't feel safe to be in your hand going forward.
Okay.
So I'll be campaigning for anywhere against those people. I'll just highlight the fact what's been happening, and it's very frustrating, and nothing been done.
Right.
And you're always in denial.
Well, are you in denial, Brandon Lewis?
No, and I'll take a very direct disagreement with you, Ferdows, on particularly highlighted with your final point, where you said nothing's been done. It's actually quite the opposite. We take a very, very fast, direct approach to these matters. My view is, actually, regardless whether it's about religion or race or somebody's sexual orientation or whether they're young, old, male or female, abuse, bullying online is not acceptable. There is no place for it in the Conservative Party. And it was about a year ago, almost to the day, when I introduced the Respect Code. We have got our Code of Conduct. We have got a very fast situation. If somebody puts something on social media, we can deal with it very, very directly and very quickly. My view has always been the best way to be clear about the fact that we will not tolerate this behaviour is where we find it, where it is a Conservative Party member, and quite often some of these cases brought forward turn out not to be Conservative Party members, but where it is a party member who's acting in a way that's inappropriate, we will deal with it.
But to be having said all this, I appreciate your personal standpoint. But I'm talking about the Conservative Party as a whole, and it looks like it's becoming a norm. And think about every single I notice every single Conservative representative appearing a big platform like Question Time. Every time they want to bash Labour Party for anti-Semitism, fair enough. Nothing should be condoned, and every single racism in every form should be condemned, and action should be taken. But Conservative, I never saw any concrete evidence that you guys are taking any proactive actions, or even social media is becoming such a worse place.
Sorry, let me just take you on directly with that first, because in your initial question you made the point about us suspending councillors. And that is that highlights my very point. We will deal with these situations. If we find something that's inappropriate, if we find something that's offensive or abusive, we will deal with it.
But then you let them back in again quietly.
Well, no,
15. You let back 15 suspended councillors were reinstated last month.
Well, hold on. Some of what's reported isn't always accurate, shockingly. In the same way that, as Firdous has outlined, some of the cases that have been reported turn out not to be Conservative Party members. But there's also a range we have to look at. So some people will have been dealt with many years ago. Some of these cases have been reported, including that 15 Ian, are cases from years ago, not recent cases. So they were suspended or went through diversity training or whatever that was decided was appropriate at the time, served that suspension or whatever it was, and then come back. So if somebody's done something inappropriate online, and there were cases from a few years ago where somebody had been suspended for 6 months, done diversity training, apologised, and has then come back into the party and has not reoffended, I do think people have an opportunity for a second chance, but it obviously depends on exactly what they have done.
You have reinstated some councillors that were suspended for Islamophobia?
We have reinstated some councillors, not 15, but some councillors who were originally, whether it was years ago or recently, suspended for Muslim hate crime. I'm not going to go into individual cases, but it is not what you necessarily read in the press. Why would you want people who've been suspended for that? Why would you want any of them back in the party? What message does that send out? Well, I think it says that, actually, I think it is quite important that if somebody has done something that is wrong and inappropriate, there is obviously a question of degree here about what people have said or done, and that's a judgment. Some of these cases, many of these cases go back way before my time as well. But there is a question about if somebody has done something that's inappropriate, who recognises that, serves their suspension, does diversity training, apologises for it, and doesn't commit that kind of act again, then I do think there is, and actually I think it is reasonable to say they can go back in the same way, let's be frank, the same way that Labour did with Naz Shah and others. I think that is actually quite reasonable, but it does depend on what they've done and that they don't repeat.
Is it really? I mean, it just means
that in this country, there is a strong sense of natural justice. If somebody does something that is so abhorrent that they should be expelled, we will expel. We have expelled people for abuse online as well.
Brandon, that you only react to these things when the media point them out to you. That if a party member, and I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with AJ Jagotta, who was chairman of the South Shields Conservative Association. He wrote an article in The Guardian in March where he said that he met you at the last year's party conference. He told you what had been happening. Your Deputy Chief of Staff you asked to follow it up. He emailed and chased again to no avail. He ended up feeling he had to resign from the Conservative Party because of the lack of follow-up at Conservative campaign headquarters. Now, if that had been a media story, I suggest to you that would have been dealt with very quickly.
Oh, well, actually, that's in a way, that's quite a good example here. So, look, first of all, we can only deal with cases when we become aware of them. Quite a lot of the cases actually are well dealt with locally. Now, AJ, I do know AJ, and it is a real shame that he has left the party. I really regret the fact that he felt that way. But his case was being dealt with. And actually, the local area expelled the person who was responsible for offending him in the way that they did.
But he says no one would talk to him. He had to chase and chase and chase again, and was left with no alternative to go because he frankly thought you didn't care.
Well, I have looked through the record. I I'm sorry that AJ feels the way he did. I've seen that there was correspondence between the party and AJ, and the local association were going through and dealing with that properly and correctly, which they did, and they expelled the person responsible.
Why is the Conservative Party the only party, apart from UKIP, not to adopt the all-party parliamentary group British Muslims' definition of Islamophobia?
Well, actually, we support the work the government's doing. There's cross-party work that the government is leading on to look into this, to find a solution to some of the issues. And there are some experts out there who have said there's some issues around that definition. Unlike the anti-Semitism definition that's been internationally accepted and acknowledged by governments as well, this hasn't been yet. And obviously, as I say, we will fully support the government in that work. And when the government is able to come to a conclusion, which they're trying to do with a cross-party working group on this, we will obviously adopt that.
Do you believe, and this is going back a couple of years, but do you believe that Zach Goldsmith's campaign for the mayoralty of London was inherently Islamophobic?
Look, I'm not going to. I can't comment on
it's a simple answer, yes or no. I can answer yes because I think it was.
I think it was a campaign that clearly was one that didn't work. He didn't win. There were parts of it that I think a number of people involved in it sort of regret the way that campaign was run. But I'm not going to comment on things from an election from several years ago.
Okay, Ferdous, thank you for your call. Let's move on to Alex in Watford. What's your question, Alex?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi.
Good evening, Brendan.
Hi.
Can I ask why the Conservative Party won't allow the British nation to have a second referendum when 2/3 of the country did not vote to leave, and now the facts are known? Ian Blackford will not accept the Conservatives' position on this matter.
Well, I've always been against, and I continue to be completely against a second referendum, and we certainly as a government don't support a second referendum. I think for a couple of reasons. First of all, we had a referendum. Parliament voted on it. We gave the public a say on it. The public had a very clear, one of the biggest democratic explanations we've ever seen. We then, in 2017, had a general election where 80% of the public voted for parties that said they would respect that referendum. So I think it's very clear that the public were keen that we do that. I think there's two other things as well. One is, there's a comment that I think it was Digby Jones made, which I thought had some sense, is, well, how many referendums do we have until we actually accept an outcome? Having a second one, a third one, or is it best of five? And I think there is an element of, when we've asked people, we've got to respect that decision. But thirdly, and I think probably most poignantly, whatever the outcome of another referendum, for me, I personally suspect it will be the same result, if not slightly bigger, for leave. But actually, whatever the outcome of that, if you had a second referendum, doesn't change the maths in Parliament. And actually, what is there in a result of another referendum that means Parliament will respect it any more than it did the first one?
Do you not think, though, that in the spirit of compromise, which we've talked about earlier, that this is something that you may have to compromise with the Labour Party on? If it came to Jeremy, I know Jeremy Corbyn isn't exactly the biggest fan of a referendum, but his party largely do support another referendum. If they said, well, look, we will get your deal through, but there's going to have to be a confirmatory referendum, is that another red line that Theresa May would have to strike through?
Well, as I say, we haven't seen yet what the conclusion of all of those conversations are, but I don't see how a second referendum is something that Parliament would support. Actually, at the moment, we've seen Parliament wouldn't support a second referendum. And if you look at the discussions going on in Parliament, quite how Parliament would even agree what the question would be, let alone whether it would have a second referendum, I think is highly questionable. So I don't think it's something that's seriously on the cards. I don't think there's any majority for it. And actually, I don't think if you look at the impact with this Brexit is having in terms of not just the referendum, but the discussion we were having and the point that actually Paul Lyons made earlier on about how strongly people feel about the fact that Parliament hasn't yet delivered on that referendum. I think having a second referendum could be potentially even more divisive, and I don't think the country would thank us for that.
Alex, a final comment from you. Do you not think, though, that that's a fair point, that you have to deliver on the first referendum before you can have another one?
No. People change their mind with facts. No. This second referendum is over. We either stay or we leave. Accept it, and I accept it. I'm proud to be a European. I want to be a European. If the worst comes to worst, resurrect Hadrian's Wall and I'll jump over the other side of it. Because Scotland will go.
But Alex, here's the problem you've got. And as Ian said earlier on, that I campaigned for and voted Remain. And I was very clear at the time, we would accept the outcome of the referendum. And I intend to stand by my word on that.
OK, Alex, thank you very much. More of your calls to come with Brandon Lewis in just a moment. 0345 6060 973. It's 8:46.
This is LBC.
Have you had an operation that has left you with persistent pain around the healed scar? You may feel this pain as burning, aching, shooting, throbbing or stabbing. At St Pancras Clinical Research, We're looking at a new potential treatment for this pain, which we apply topically. The study will take place in London, and if you volunteer, you'll be paid for your time and reasonable expenses. Find out more at stpancreasclinicalresearch.com. That's stpancreasclinicalresearch.com.
What would you do if you knew there was a place to learn step-by-step strategies designed to help you make the right moves inside the financial markets? A place to develop skills that could help you generate income and build confidence towards your retirement goals. At Online Trading Academy, we know there's an investor in all of us, and we know how to teach people just like you the skills and knowledge that could empower you to take control of your financial future. Start by taking our free introductory class where you can learn about the 2 biggest mistakes investors make, as well as strategies that could help you make your money work harder for you. For over 20 years, Online Trading Academy has been teaching student skills designed to help them invest with the confidence of the pros. To register, visit otauk.com or call 01727 873 847. That's 01727 873 847. Trading involves risk and you can lose money. Online Trading Academy makes no promises or guarantees of investment performance. The value of investments is variable and can go down as well as up.
Have you ever bought an investment sold by Barclays, Halifax, Lloyds, Santander or any other bank or financial advisor? Investments like stocks and shares ISAs, investment bonds and certain types of pension can be risky. If you lost money with one of these investments, you could be owed thousands of pounds in compensation. Even if you no longer have the investment or the paperwork, here at Goodwin Barrett we can still help. To start your free assessment with Goodwin Barrett, text GOOD to 60777. That's GOOD to 60777.
Unlock the city with the new Range Rover Evoque. Know your side streets. From your inner city beats. Know your underbelly and where to fill your belly.
Your lamb, madam.
Know your north from your south. Live for the city with the new Range Rover Evoque. Land Rover, above and beyond.
Choose Swell Heating and you get a lot more than an efficient boiler from top manufacturers like Worcester Bosch. Visit swellheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
8:49. Let's go back to your calls. Brendan, as opposed to Brandon, is in Nottingham. Hello, Brendan.
Hello there.
Hi.
Mr. Lewis, can I ask, the government mentioned, I can't remember exactly when, there's been so much going on lately, a while ago, that austerity is now officially over. Can I ask when it's over for public sector workers, please? Before people start saying, oh, you're lucky you got a job and all that sort of thing, I'm wondering if you realise, the public realise, but particularly you realise, do you realise there are civil servants, educated, skilled people on minimum wage, skilled people, civil servants? When is it going to end for them, please?
Well, good evening, Brendan, first of all. And the Prime Minister, yes, made the statement around the end of austerity. Now, partly some of that has already started to come through with obviously the investments we're making in the NHS with that record $20.5 billion. But actually, what she also was referring to, which will come through later this year, is the comprehensive spending review, and looking at what we can do as we go into that comprehensive spending review as the economy is growing and as things are growing. And obviously, if we can get through dealing with Brexit as well, looking at where we go in the future and how we deliver on that for people.
Right, so you are aware that some civil servants are on minimum wage.
Well, I have to say I'm not going to pretend I was particularly aware of exactly what wages any specific civil servants were on. But the general point around the end of austerity is what the Prime Minister was referring to is the work we're doing both with the NHS now and actually investments we're making in other areas, but particularly as we go into the comprehensive spending review later this year.
What was the last pay rise you had, Brendan, in percentage terms?
Sorry, 1%, because it's been a 1% pay cap. For the last 9 years, I've had 4.5% over 9 years.
So, Brandon,
I'm a court usher, which I might say now, I'm extremely proud. I'm extremely proud to serve the public and serve people and help people. But court ushers' starting pay is minimum wage, $8.21 an hour. I've been a court usher for 4 years, Mr. Lewis, and for that I get a massive £8.30, 9p above minimum wage.
So, Brandon, when you hear Brandon say he's had a 1% pay rise for the last 9 years, people will have had, MPs are getting 2.7% pay rise from this month. Something wrong there, surely.
Well, look, yeah. I mean, this is something that I've quite a lot of MPs that have had put at them over the last few months. And the challenge for MPs is, of course, we have no say in it whatsoever. And I think it is also why it's so important. The reality is we have had some very, very difficult years. We were very upfront about the fact we have very difficult decisions to make back in 2010. The situation was that serious. It's taken a substantial period of time to be able to get through. And that's why, as I say, as we get into that comprehensive spending review, I know the Chancellor and the Prime Minister are very keen to be able to build on the work we're doing with the NHS in terms of investments to actually move past that period of austerity to make sure that everybody's able to share in the benefits of the economy.
OK, Brendan, thank you. Jack is in Ashford. What's your question, Jack?
Oh, hello there. So I'm a campaigner for the Conservatives in Ashford for the local election. And do you realise, Mr. Lewis, how much Brexit is damaging the reputation of the Conservatives? There's people who've voted Conservative all their life, and because of Brexit, they now will vote someone else. So when is this going to be sorted with a new leader who can deal with it?
Well, look, Jack, as I said earlier on, thank you first of all for. If you're a campaigner and an activist for us out in Ashford, all the work you do, because, for any political party, it's people like yourself who actually mean that people like me can be on the show like this. I started off doing exactly what you're doing when I was young. I was delivering leaflets and I was a volunteer of the party much longer than I've been a member of Parliament. So a huge thank you for what you do. But I do appreciate how difficult things are at the moment. We've got a situation where the government is looking to deliver on a referendum. We've not been able to get that through Parliament. Parliamentarians of all parties have got to look to themselves to deliver on what was voted on, both in the general election, as I've said, and in that referendum. I do not underestimate just how difficult this is. But what I would say to you, particularly as you're looking into next week, Jack, is to remember that the elections next week are on what people are doing locally, what great Conservative councillors and candidates either do and are looking to do in the future to make people's lives just that bit better every single day.
Is there any part of you that thinks, well, as the chairman of the Conservative Party, as the Prime Minister's representative on earth in a way, I should apologise for the absolute horlicks that my government has made of this, and it's made Jack's life more difficult. It's made all Conservative activists' lives more difficult. It's a wonder that any of them are tramping the streets at all.
Look, I'm consistently clear about how much we appreciate actually everything all the activists do. And
do you appreciate the damage that's being caused?
As I was just saying, I do appreciate not just how frustrating it is for activists, but actually the impact of not having yet been able to deliver on Brexit has on the doorstep. And yeah, look, I'm very happy to apologise for the fact that we have not been able to give you the kind of environment, Jack, that you and others would want going into May the 2nd. I was a councillor for many years, and you always knew going into those elections the best thing that can happen is for the central government to be able to leave local authorities and local candidates to get on with and do their job locally. And at the moment you've got that national issue of Brexit sitting there. I can only assure you we are doing everything we can to deliver it. And I appreciate the comment you made about leadership, but again, Jack, I'll just take you back to the point I made earlier on. This is about getting a majority in Parliament, and at the moment Parliament itself has not voted for anything positively. It seems to be in this deadlock of what it will and won't do without actually going through and voting on what it was charged to do, which is to leave the EU.
Jack, let me ask you a question. Have you noticed, when you're talking to voters in the Ashford area, have you noticed that they've become more unfriendly towards you as a Conservative Party activist?
Oh yeah, definitely. They hardly want to talk. They say, "No, you've betrayed us." The Conservative Party has. Brexit should have been delivered, that kind of thing.
And what new leader would you like?
If I'm honest, I just want someone who's going to sort Brexit out so we can get on with other issues. People won't.
But who do you think that would be?
I personally think someone like Andrea Leadsom. I think she should have been leader beforehand instead of Theresa May.
The Andrea Leadsom bandwagon starts here. Thank you very much indeed, Jack. Brandon, a couple of weeks ago I interviewed Heidi Allen, who is now the leader of the independent group Change UK, and she gave me a list of Tory MPs she was trying to recruit to Change UK. Just have a listen.
It's a massive decision for people to make.
So when can we expect Antoinette Sambach and Justine Greening to come over?
We have very good relations. I sound like a proper politician now, don't I? Antoinette and Justine and other colleagues, Sam Geemer, Philip Lee. There's a whole Hugh Merriman, he's been brilliant recently. Gito Bebb, Alberto Costa. There's lots of Tory
So all
MPs
these people that you're talking to.
We're chatting to all our good friends who remain committed to the same things as us, which is sensible grown-up politics.
And give us a prediction of when we can see the next defection.
Oh, I can't do that. I'm no good as a bookie.
Well, it was slightly extraordinary that she actually told me the people that she was trying to attract to the independent group. Are you concerned that any of those might defect?
Well, I wouldn't want to see anybody defect. I didn't want to see anybody defect in the first place. But actually, even some of the people she's rid off are people who want to make sure they are continuing. If you talk to Philip Lee's views, he wants to fight for what he believes in within the Conservative Party. And I've said before, I'm very proud of the fact that I'm part of a party that is such a big, wide open tent. And actually, that's part of the strength of the party as well.
If the independent group do terribly at the European elections and it all goes to pot, would you welcome back Anna Soubry, Heidi Allen and Sarah Wollaston?
Well, actually, I haven't heard any of them asking to come back. But look, we as a party, over the last few months, we've had people join us, councillors who are ex-Labour councillors, Liberal Democrat councillors. Obviously, we are a party.
Would you have them back?
Well, they are people who have left the party and have gone to work for another party against the Conservative Party. So I think at the moment it'd be quite difficult for them to come back.
I'm quite surprised by that answer. I'd have thought you would say you would welcome a sinner that repenteth.
Well, as I say, they've not made an approach yet. I've always been clear. I never say never, but at the moment I think it'd be very difficult for any of them to come back into the Conservative Party. And I have to say, to be fair to Heidi and listening to what she just said, she doesn't sound like somebody who's even contemplating that at the moment.
Mike's in Cheshunt. Hello, Mike.
Yes, good evening, Ian and Mr. Lewis. Just very briefly, I'd like to ask you, when is your government going to have the courage and the leadership to once and for all scrap this high-speed HS2 link? It's unaffordable, the costs are out of control. The government have just refused HS2 Limited permission to proceed and award contracts worth hundreds of millions of pounds. You've allowed them to shut Euston Station over the entire Easter weekend, disrupting the travel plans of tens of thousands of people.
Listen, we've literally got a minute left, Mike, so let Brandon answer. I suppose the answer to the question is when Liz Truss becomes Prime Minister.
Well, actually, at HS2 is something I think that goes a huge opportunity for making sure we are doing something. Come back to what I said earlier on, spreading the benefits of economic growth to people right across the country, and HS2 is part of that.
So you would not advocate the cancellation of HS2?
No, I wouldn't at the moment. Actually, I think HS2 and what it opens up for the north.
That leaves it open.
Well, no, let me shut it down. Then I do not see why we should walk away from a massive infrastructure investment, something this country needs, that opens up and links our economy better to the north of England.
Brandon Lewis, your trial is over. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.
And we will be hopefully next week talking to a senior member of the Labour Party as well. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk about religious persecution. Christians are now said to be the world's most persecuted religious minority. Yet actually, few people talk about that. We hear a lot about Muslims and Jews